to your mother. It's time for another episode of Birds with Friends. Just some high-flying, ran fast vertical stems and professors from Penn watching eagles eat and pray like Pazookies on birthdays. It's Philadelphia. Marissa, Bo, and Zach kicking it. Cooler than 3 penguins till Zach runs off with his valet keys. He's a real nuanced goose. Pull up a branch, get loose. It's time for some juice on some
Birds with Friends.
The early bird gets the worm but prefers getting turned like a turn on some
Birds with Friends.
Marissa, Bo, and Zach are here to squawk. Don't miss the mistress talk on some.
I love the combines. It's effectively the start of the offseason. I know they talk about the Senior Bowl like that.
And what a long offseason it was.
When you're at like a company event with Bo, it's honestly it's like Peyton Manning at a quarterback convention. He's a big deal at these things.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Birds with Friends on a Friday afternoon. Bo Wulf, Marissa Dunn, Zach Berman, Zach and I back home. Marissa still on the scene in Indianapolis, hobnobbing with all the big decision makers at the Combine. We are here for one of the big episodes of the offseason. It's time for Flu World Order. Marissa, how are you?
I'm very excited. I hope everyone's ready to play along. You made this awesome Google Doc thing where we're going to give out a prize, apparently, to whoever.
You know what? Somebody sent me. I could have done it better. I could have done it like a ranking instead of the drop downs, but I did it in 5 minutes before.
No,
the show,
that's
so,
great.
Sorry.
I know this is a big episode of the year. We got a lot of comments after last episode. So yeah, looking forward to it. I know you guys are back in Philly, but we had a great time seeing you guys and being together. So it's been a fun week. How are you guys doing?
Good, Zach.
Doing great. I'm doing great. Excited for this podcast. Looking forward to Flu World Order. Enjoyed this spending time with you guys last week, or I should say this week. Week's not over, and free agency coming up, draft coming up. But right now, looking forward to this pod.
Zach, is there anything Eagles related aside from what we're going to get to that has happened since we talked on Wednesday that needs to be discussed? Tuesday.
Since we talked Tuesday. No, Shane Steichen spoke on Wednesday and raved about Alex Tanney, Brian Johnson, Jalen Hurts. He was essentially saying that
Zach Berman.
No, he was essentially saying in Indianapolis, as the Colts are searching for a quarterback, and he was talking about different things you look for. But one thing he talked about was just the way Hurts worked at it, right? I think the answer came with a question about why some quarterbacks succeed and why some quarterbacks fail in the top 10. And he spoke about how Hurts is there at 6 a.m., out the door at 9:30 p.m., the work ethic that we've heard about from Jalen Hurts. He emphasized that, spoke about Brian Johnson's game or his ability to work with the offense, his play calling, because we haven't seen Brian Johnson as a play caller. But Shane Steichen said Brian Johnson really has a good knack for it. They could just tell he could tell in the conversations. Johnson with ideas and knowing what to do and a feel for the offense. Said Alex Tanney, second to none as a coach, was really impressed with how he works with the quarterbacks and has that NFL experience in his background as well. So that was Shane Steichen on Wednesday. And also of note, and this is relevant to perhaps all three of us. We still need to see what happens down the line here, but the Eagles will have joint practices with the Cleveland Browns in Philadelphia the second week of the preseason. This was announced by Kevin Stefanski to the Cleveland reporters this week rather.
Kevin Stefanski from
Philadelphia, the Philadelphia area, went to Penn. So we know that we know that the Eagles' second preseason opponent is going to be the Cleveland Browns, and we know that they'll have those two practices leading up to that game in Philly. And so the Eagles will presumably be on the road against the Jets this year. We saw 2 years ago they had joint practices up there. So that at least two of their preseason opponents right there.
No trips to Miami then.
I don't anticipate back-to-back trips to Miami, but that was quality bonding time with you. So if we get down there, we can do it again.
I prefer the bonding time to the
practice
shop talk. But, yeah.
I enjoyed the bonding time there.
A lot of responses. A lot of people taking the opportunity to come down hard on either one of us.
Yeah, look, that's.
Yes, it was a very controversial episode.
Yeah, very divisive.
But I can always get better, and
I stand
honestly,
by being triggered.
and you know, the audience speaks. What the audience wants, you know, we will do our best to deliver. This is we're nothing without the audience.
But I don't know if that's true. I mean, the audience is not a monolith. You know.
Sure, there's yeah, okay, yeah. So
this is a show for the sickos. Everybody else,
you know,
on board if they want.
but I'm happy to lean into everything and anything. So let's, you know, whatever needs to be done for a quality show, I'm on board.
Hey Zach, what did you make of the NFLPA report card?
Yeah, we should talk about that. What did I make of it? Actually, so
they want
we can
class seats.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can separate the Eagles part of it from the rest of the league, because look, if you were in Arizona or Washington, obviously Jacksonville, there's some damning things on there. But obviously focusing on the Eagles, they have real high marks as far as their training staff, as far as their all their staffs are very well regarded by the players, which is a good sign. I think the facilities need upgrades, right? That seems clear. And I could probably tell you, I'm sure you feel the same way, Bo. When you see some of these newer facilities and these newer locker rooms, the Eagles locker room is tight. And
yeah, especially with the rosters expanded in the middle of the
exactly
locker room stanchions. Yeah.
And the training areas and the weight room. I mean, I'm not in those I'm not in those at the team facility, but from
you and
from what
Jalen just squatting next to each other.
But the NovaCare complex, it's not new anymore, right? It was built in the early 2000s. We're in 2023 right now, so you're looking at a 20-year-old facility, and some of these facilities in the past 2 decades have probably surpassed that. And you know, there are certain limitations you might have from a space perspective, especially when you have a city facility as opposed to a facility that's in the suburbs or the outskirts. But certainly that's something that stood out there. And then the travel stood out. The Eagles are one of 8 teams, I believe, that don't offer their players first-class seats. And this actually came up back during the Chip Kelly era. I recall Malcolm Jenkins tried lobbying for it, and there was a bit that the team website did when I think Miles Sanders and someone else was asking Howie Roseman for the first class seats, and this past year, and from what I heard, they actually might have gotten it later in the year this year, but I need to find out more there. But certainly that I imagine that's something that could be worked on, is the team travel. But I think the Eagles as an organization should feel pretty good about where they rank in that survey, because staffing is such an important thing, and they really have trust from their training staff and the different operations behind the scenes.
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of teams got bad grades with travel. I think that was probably overall one of the lowest grades.
Did Michael fill out the report card?
He did.
Wow.
Yeah, I think
Tough
it was
grader
earlier.
or easy grader? What did you think?
I think he's probably an easy grader. He's pretty content. But yeah, it was interesting to see. Like, they had the treatment of families on there. I liked that one, obviously. I think the Vikings
Eagles didn't do great there.
I think they did okay.
They did just okay, right? Like a B or B minus or something.
B minus, yeah.
Yeah.
So it says that they so the Browns actually had a room that they had like a daycare at the games. And the Eagles, I guess, did, but it says you had to bring your own nanny or someone to watch the child, versus like a service that takes care of the children. So that was probably one of the difference. But B minus, not bad. But yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, the Cardinals stuff is hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, just
what they had to make guys pay for their food.
Pay for their food.
That's crazy. Like, that is one of the biggest
insane.
things. That is my favorite thing, is like that Michael brings home every meal during the season, because then it's less grocery shopping I have to do and things I don't have to cook. So fewer. Yes.
No, it's not fewer.
So yeah, the fact that if he had to pay for it, that would be pretty crazy. But
And the food, I don't know what it's like in Cleveland, but in Philly, it's very well regarded.
Yeah.
The food in the cafeteria.
yeah, it's always different. They,
Mhm.
do things each month like specials. So yeah.
All right,
Interesting
Zach.
survey.
Are we ready for the main event?
Yes, let's do it.
It's time for Flu World Order. Now, you can check my Twitter. We'll put it in the show notes too.
It is. It's in the description on YouTube right now. If you're
It's in the
watching on
description
YouTube.
You can play along, and we're gonna whoever. We won't really know until the end of next season, so please remind us. Maybe Deniz will have to be in charge of that again. But the winner, whoever wins outside the show, will get some kind of prize for the best score in Flu World Order. Maybe you get to predetermine how long an episode's going to be. Maybe you could join us on the show. Maybe you could get, one of Zach's shirts.
Sure, I will give a shirt. Yeah.
Emily
Sure,
will be very happy.
Emily will be
give a
happy with
shirt
that.
for you.
Yes.
So fill it out. Join along. Play
What
along.
about one of your old T-shirts, Bo? Because
Yeah,
we
I
know
promised those long ago, and I've learned that I just won't follow through with that. I'm not good at I'm too good at procrastinating. Yesterday, now Zach remembers this. My driver's license had expired, and I got like
Oh,
you
the
get your
paper
auto
one, right?
renew, and I
Yeah.
had the paper, right? So I had the
Yes.
paper driver's license, but I didn't have the photo card. And this happened in, I don't know, July or August. And, I didn't do it all season long. I was just carrying the paper around with me. I went yesterday to the DMV. It took like 4 minutes.
Oh, wow.
The one in South Philly, that's like 5 minutes from the NovaCare complex. I could have done it anytime, and it was a delight. The woman had the same birthday as me. It was a pleasure.
June 11th, right?
What a beautiful experience.
Zach's probably very happy you
I
have
wasn't
an
worse
actual
for wear. It
license
didn't
now.
affect me in any way, but an errand that I could have done earlier. So shout out to the Oregon Avenue DMV.
How's the updated photo relative to the one from 4 years ago?
Well, I actually lost the old one.
Okay.
That happened a week ago, so I can't compare it. But I thought the new photo was fine.
You lost your expired driver's license.
Yeah.
How did you lose it? Out of curiosity, you haven't needed it.
Well, because when we went to Florida with the family, we rented a car, and I had handed it to Rachel while she was getting the car, and I was getting the bags.
Gotcha.
And somewhere in the exchange of giving it back, it was fumbled.
The rental car drop off is not the finest hour for Bo Wulf.
Oh yeah, last year.
Well, you remember Cleveland last year? He left his wallet in
Yeah, my wallet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it ended up that I didn't leave it.
It was in your pants, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It was in something. Yeah.
You found it in the washing machine.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's in a different pair of pants, I think.
Zach, have you ever lost like your wallet or your license or anything like that?
I haven't lost my wallet nor my license. No.
I can only imagine like the panic.
Well, so the funny thing is,
I don't
because
use a
my
wallet
license has been expired, I've just been carrying around my passport in my backpack for like 5 months.
Yeah, when you go to bars, that always jumps out when you show them the passport.
Right.
It's like, this guy's really official.
Yeah.
There's no fake IDs for
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
My FBI badge.
Yeah. No, but Marissa, to answer your question, I don't use a wallet anymore. I use my phone case now.
Yeah,
and that's why
me too.
I'm actually down on I don't carry cash, which can sometimes be a problem. I need to figure that out. I mean, there's
What do you do about tip in hotel?
So that I bring cash in my backpack, but if I were to valet park somewhere, I need to always remember to bring bring cash. And then
by the way,
that's really the only area I think.
When Zach and I went out to dinner on Tuesday night, there was a valet service, and Zach and I are standing outside in the home of the initial infamous valet story from Zach, and here comes this guy just sprinting past us. It was a very nice full circle moment.
Yeah. And the person,
and as he walked by, as he ran by, you could see for just a brief second he locked eyes with Zach, and there was a knowing nod of I know you know.
The person whose car it was, I imagine gave a generous tip accordingly, right? You see the guy hustling, that's worthy of that's worthy of it. I do need to monitor my rights. Someone mentioned it on podcast,
Your Miranda rights.
on Twitter that I am ending. I'm pulling
The
a
right to bear
Casey
arms?
Toohill. I'm pulling a Casey Toohill here. Remember
Mm.
that he
Yeah.
would end sentences with right, and
Just
so I'm trying
say
to
left instead.
I'm trying to be cognizant of it. So, but you know, I would say raise your if you hear a right, raise your hand. You know, I'll know not to do it.
I mean, I'm not going to do that. I think you can speak however you like to speak.
Yeah.
All right. Flu World Order. A massive offseason ahead for the Eagles. They have 19 pending free agents, including Jason Kelsey and Brandon Graham, who have those sort of automatic voids on the contract. We're including those guys. We have also added Quez Watkins as a potential trade possibility. We'll get to the exact specifics, but just to sort of set the scene here, the Eagles, according to Over the Cap, have just like $100,000 in effective cap space. Now they're going to be able to create some more cap space by restructuring Darius Slay and Leighton Johnson, most likely. But there are not a ton of guys for them to do that with, as they have done in past years. They are not playing with a lot of cap space. So it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out. Howie Roseman talked this week about expecting a lot of turnover. Zach wrote about it today. You can read that on The Athletic. And there are a lot of pieces, a lot of franchise legends here who are potentially leaving, a lot of guys who are obviously impactful on the defense. I think, 8 or 9 guys who played significant snaps, all slated to be free agents. And we are going to rank them in order of 1 to 20, in order of how likely they are to return to the Eagles. You want a low score here. The lowest score wins. And for the 19 free agents, they count if they are back or re-signed at any point in 2023. So for a player like Boston Scott, if he is re-signed in August, that counts. If he's re-signed in April and then is cut, he still counts. Same goes for a guy like Brett Kern. And then for Quez Watkins, this is more of a future projection. Will he be on the week 1 roster? And that includes injured reserve and PUP and anything like that. But if he is traded or cut, then he does not count.
One thing I would just like to add here is that the franchise tag, because this is probably in conjunction with whether a player comes back or not. My expectation, and I wrote this today, that I don't anticipate the Eagles using the franchise tag for, you can discuss a few reasons there, but primarily because I don't think they're going to want to take on that 1-year cap hold. Once you give the tag, that becomes a portion of your cap that's allocated to it, even if the tag's not signed. And it's a big number for that 1 year. And as you just outlined in an important way, the Eagles are tight on cap space as it is. They can open up cap space, but I don't think they're going to want a chunk of that cap space just reserved for a player while they're in negotiations with him. So I don't anticipate the Eagles using the tag. I know there's been speculation elsewhere that they will or that they could. That's not a direction I see them going.
Yeah, I think if we can talk about this next week when we get to free agent quackatology. But if you're thinking about like players the Eagles can add who are significant this offseason or bring back, they have to be sort of multi-year deals when they can really push the money to the future. And that's why the franchise tag doesn't make sense. You are just like locking down this albatross of a number that has no flexibility to it. So that's not going to be the case. All right. We start alphabetically, Zach, with the number 11 free agent, according to the Athletics Top 150 free agent rankings. I mean, I might quibble with these rankings myself, but I wasn't asked to do it. So we'll go by what we have here. I believe someone at the Ringer also has rankings. That person neglected to include, in my opinion, the top offensive lineman on the market, but that's a problem for him. James Bradbury, the cornerback, who signed a 1-year, $10 million deal approximately. It was like 7.2 salary plus the signing bonus last year. James Bradbury, the cornerback, opposite Darius Slay, a player who I think the Eagles would love to have back if they could, but seems to me unlikely that that will happen. He's going to go look for a big money deal. I have him, Zach, at number 15 on my 1 to 20 rankings.
I have him at number 16 on my 1 to 20
Whoa.
rankings. So
Okay.
we're on a similar wavelength there. Do you think there's any? Well, I imagine you think there's a possibility because he's not 20 there, but you think it's extraordinarily unlikely, I imagine.
I think it's unlikely. I think, we will get to the big guys, but I think I think they would like to bring back one of the key players on defense, and that is probably Javon Hargrave or CJ Gardner-Johnson. And if those guys both leave, there might be money that they didn't think they had for James Bradberry, but he's 30 years old. They can't keep just having old guys on the outside because Darius Slay is 31 or 32 even. And he's committed to be here for at least another year. It's just not a good match. I think it was a great signing for them last season. You guys, you shake hands. It's going to probably play very well for them from a comp pick game because I think he's going to get paid well.
Yeah.
But it's just in terms of the life cycles of where the Eagles are and where Bradberry is, I think this is very unlikely. James
has been fairly honest about he wants to get paid. He wants to be on a winning team, but he wants to get paid, and he's going to want. And
especially after last offseason, obviously, when the Giants sort of screwed him a little bit.
Exactly. He did what he needed to do to put himself in this position. He signed that 1-year deal so he can hit the market in a good spot, and he's hitting the market in a really good spot here. So I don't think the Eagles are going to pay this big money to two cornerbacks, particularly at that age. And I think James Bradberry deserves a bigger deal, and he's going to he's going to get it, and he earned it.
Yeah. Okay. We move on. I think this is just in general. Zach, you texted me last night. This is difficult. It's a very hard flu world order. Maybe the most difficult, probably the most loaded that we've ever had in the 6-year history of flu world order.
I have not ranked my flu orders, but I'll take your word for it.
And next up, we have a difficult one. Fletcher Cox, who is number, let's see, where is he on the athletic rankings? Number 52 on the athletic rankings of the top 150 free agents. He will be 32 years old. I think this is a tough one, Zach, because, 6 months ago, it felt like Fletcher Cox was destined here for his final season. The Eagles signed him to, that sort of lifetime achievement contract, that $14 million deal that we all thought was kind of wild in terms of price. And it was a nice way to send him off. But I sort of feel like now that Javon Hargrave is going to hit the market, presumably, if he gets a monster deal elsewhere and does not come back, maybe the Eagles bring back Fletcher Cox if the price is right. Do you want to replace 2 starting defensive linemen? You like Jordan Davis, you like Milton Williams, but you need somebody else you can rely on there in that rotation. I don't know. My opinion on Fletcher Cox's likelihood to change has it has increased in percentage-wise over the past couple of months, I think. How do you feel?
I have Fletcher Cox at 7 on this list.
I have him at 7.
Okay.
Wow.
That's interesting. Great minds, right? So I
it's been a while
with,
since we had a head-to-head flu world order, pre Zach Berman.
Miss Shield.
Slightly different dynamic.
Yeah. So Fletcher Cox, I think I don't want to repeat what you just said there because I believe it was a good way of framing it. Well, I suppose we'll see in a few minutes. I think I'm more optimistic about Javon Hargrave potentially returning than you might be. But I don't think both are going to be back. I think it would behoove the Eagles to try to bring one of them back. I would rather bring Hargrave back. But I think that there is a chance for Cox at less than $14 million, certainly. But I also think there's going to be a bit of a market for Fletcher Cox as well. And I think hearing Howie Roseman over the past few months and I should say past few years, one thing he's recognized is that he can get a bit too sentimental with his guys. for lack of a better term. And Fletcher Cox is certainly one of his guys. So I think that he might be more deliberate in that this offseason, because that was not the case last offseason. And I think that they might have a number for Fletcher Cox to return. Certainly Fletcher Cox, he's one of the best players in Eagles history. No story of the past 2 decades of the Eagles can be written without Fletcher Cox in it. And
I don't know.
well, I will,
but yeah.
I will push back on that. I mean, Fletcher Cox,
I'd like to see you write the history of the Eagles for the past 2 decades.
perhaps. But he's such a key part of this organization. And the fairy tale ending is him finishing his career in Philadelphia. I just think he's going to have more of an opportunity to make money elsewhere than with the Eagles.
2 things on the sentimentality. One is that Howie Roseman has said this before, that he knows that he's too sentimental and he has to guard against it, and has still done it. So just because he says it doesn't mean he's actually going to follow through. But I also think that there is a difference that matters between, bringing back guys like Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham and Jason Kelce versus like being overly sentimental about Alshon Jeffrey and extending a window for guys like these guys who have been here for 10 plus years. That's a little bit different. And it's nice to have that dynamic in the locker room where you can, sort of post up like that matters in this organization, right? It's the you don't have to be sentimental about everybody on the roster. And I think like they're almost forced into that because of the cap situation this year, where they really can't do that. So it's kind of nice, but I think Fletcher Cox is really a domino of what happens with Javon Hargrave.
By the way, is the my weakness can be being a little too sentimental about players? Is that like Michael Scott's? I care too much. I try too hard. Yeah, I mean, if like of all your weaknesses, it's. I mean, certainly I have a lot of weaknesses as well. But like if it's,
I get sentimental about my t-shirts too.
Yeah. So yeah, but it is true. He has been, and I think bringing Deshaun Jackson back was, an example of it. We can go on down the list. I always
Jason
said
Peters,
I always said that the irony, I don't know if I would call it ironic or not, but it was just odd that like the time that he took a really hard stance on that was Malcolm Jenkins. Like sometimes you just got to let guys go, and it was someone who could still play in a position where they didn't have a backstop at it. So
yeah, but they needed to turn the locker room over to Carson.
But if they didn't do that, then and this is a quick aside. I was talking to someone from another organization this week about just kind of the life cycle of NFL teams, and when teams have a year when you really take it on the chin. And one thing that I said is that in my experience covering the Eagles, right, that they don't have a 14-win season this year if not for what happened in 2020. They don't win the Super Bowl in 2017 if not for what happened in 2015. I think it's certainly not the type of thing where you want one of those years where you crash and fall, but sometimes you kind of need that to operate with clearer eyes. And it's not from a big picture perspective. Sometimes those seasons when everything goes bad and there's legitimately, crap going on inside the building, if you will, long term, if approached correctly, that's not the worst thing. Like I think the Rams, for instance, can learn quite a bit from what's happened this past season. And Jordan Rodriguez from The Athletic did a good job outlining some of that. If you use it constructively, I think it could set you on a proper course.
Yeah, but you don't need to do that. Like, look at the Chiefs, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily it's not like you have to bottom out. It's just that's how it happened to happen.
No, but humility can often come from getting kicked in the ass, right? Whereas sometimes when you're winning, it's the expression, winning's the best deodorant. Winning can obscure a lot in an organization on a roster. So,
okay. All right, we move on to number 3. A player who I believe is not ranked in the top 150, although I think he should be. Oh, no, he's number 125. And that is Andre Dillard, the former first-round pick of the Eagles, who got to moonlight a little bit at guard this year, but he's a left tackle only. Pretty difficult to imagine any return here, given that the Eagles are not going to spend money on a backup offensive lineman. And you would think that there's a market for somebody to sign him as a penciled-in starter at left tackle, or at least somebody to compete. I have him at 17.
I have him at 20.
Wow.
I don't think Andre Dillard's coming back.
I actually have him at 18. I'm sorry.
Okay. I think Andre Dillard has. I actually respect the way he handled this past year, right? And we don't know. Well, there, stick my hand up. I said right. We don't know if he's like a bust, if you will, because Jordan Mailata was a good player. We haven't really seen enough of Andre Dillard, but I think Andre Dillard's going to go to a place where he has an opportunity to play, or certainly a better opportunity than in Philadelphia. And I think that could be a good lottery ticket signing for a team looking for an offensive tackle.
I think he makes sense for a team like that. I would push back on we can't declare him a bust, because, I mean, he was drafted as an older player, so he was supposed to be ready to play. He had an opportunity to play, and he stunk. And that's the entire reason that Mailata got this shot in the first place. And then, he had the one-on-one competition and lost that competition. He's looked better since then, and he's gotten stronger, and he's improved. But, I mean, you use a first-round pick on a player like that, and he is not good when he has to play. Bust is a strong word.
Sure.
It's not like he's going to be out of the league, but that was a bad pick, it turned out.
Definitely a bad pick there, as it turned out. I'm just saying he really didn't get a chance to play that much there. But I hear your point. As a quick aside, I was talking to Elliott Shore-Parks about some draft prospects earlier this week, and it's interesting how you've gotten into my head on some things. Georgia Tech has this edge rusher, Keon White, who Daniel Jeremiah ranks really high, like I think a top 10 player. Okay, he's a transfer from he was a tight end at Old Dominion. Now he's an edge rusher at Georgia Tech. He's going to test and he's 24 years old. That's the punchline here. And I'm like, 24 years old. He can't. This guy's not a top 10 pick. He's 24 years old, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you got in my head on that one.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad. All right. Next up, another interesting player. TJ Edwards, who is number 47 on the Athletics Top 150. We know the TJ Edwards story. Zach has written about it. You can read that ahead of his return to Chicago. A player who emerged as a very solid middle linebacker for the Eagles as a full-time starter this year. We know he gets along well with Jonathan Gannon. I think the coaching turnover is an interesting factor here for all of these defensive guys, because we know how much Howie Roseman has talked about getting the personnel for the coaches, who knows exactly what Sean Desai wants. But just knowing the Eagles, knowing how little space they have, it's hard to imagine them spending real money on this position. But potentially, with both TJ Edwards and Kaiser White free agents, you would think they might want to bring one back. I'm not so sure that will be the case. You've got Nakobe Dean, obviously. I think TJ Edwards, I have him as the kind of player who the Eagles would take back if the price was surprisingly low, but I don't think they're going to make him a priority. I have him at number 9.
I have him at number 12. I thought you outlined it well. I think he's going to get paid. I think he's someone who the Eagles would at a different stage, perhaps, or a different position, would love to keep, because this is the type of player who, when you're on the phone in April after the draft, you probably still are pointing to him, in that undrafted guy. He comes in, he earns a roster spot, he earns playing time, he earns a starting spot, and now he's going to earn a big contract somewhere else. I just don't see the Eagles paying linebackers, and I think he's going to get paid. And as a quick aside on TJ Edwards, congratulations. I believe TJ got married last weekend. Right. So he's on the Marissa and Michael Dunn calendar for wedding planning. And yeah, so congratulations to TJ, now a husband.
So Anthony Harris and Alex Singleton were in attendance.
Nice.
And Camu Gruge Hill. Camu Gruge Hill. All right, so you have him at 12. You don't think he's coming back? You think he's going to Arizona?
Oh, I don't know where he's going. I actually think I was going to say Chicago as a chance. He is from Chicago, and they have so much money and so many needs. But they also have a comparable player there. I don't know where he's going to go. I think I'll start to match destinations a little more next week when we do Quackatology. Is that right?
Yeah, although that's more about people coming to the Eagles, but yeah.
Sure, but I will look around the league and kind of and match up who goes where. Most of my work so far has been on this exercise. Are the Eagles bringing this player back? Can he, that kind of thing. So,
all right, a very interesting duo coming up here, and maybe we'll go to break after the safety duo here. Next up is number 92 on the Athletics Top 150, Marcus Epps. We have talked for a long time, Zach, about Marcus Epps and CJ Gardner-Johnson. Who's more likely to come back? Probably not both. We'll get to CJ in a minute. I have Marcus Epps at 6.
I have Marcus Epps at 8. Yeah, so good point there. And another quick aside here. I don't know if we covered this on the previous show or not. Did we cover why Howie didn't sign players in season extensions last season? I want to give you credit here. You hit the nail on the head. You asked Howie about it earlier this year. Howie did not, or I shouldn't say you asked Howie about it. I think you've looked into this. And
I asked him about it. It was on the record. It was embargoed, but it was on the record.
Oh, okay. All right. I like how you saw the wheels spinning in my head there. Yeah, you asked Howie about this, and he said there was a reason for it, and he did not give the reason. He said the reason over the weekend, and over the week, and the reason is that they had such good team chemistry, they were winning, and they had so many guys who played the same spots or were in similar situations, and there was speculation that maybe they were doing it because of like cap space or Jalen Hurts' contract. But you said at the time, you think it was because if you give Marcus Epps a deal, how does that affect CJ Gardner-Johnson or vice versa? TJ Edwards and Kaiser White. If you pay Javon Hargrave at the age of 29, what does that say to James Bradbury at the age of 29? Right? There's so many players in these kind of situations that it was best to kind of let everything play out, which is what's uncharacteristic for the Eagles. But I think Epps and CJ is a great example of that because that could have been a potentially disruptive development.
Well, okay, let me hear where you have CJ, and then let's talk. Well, we can talk again about this dance between the two of these guys. I have CJ Gardner-Johnson at 8, where you have Marcus Epps.
I have CJ Gardner-Johnson at 5.
Okay. You think the Eagles want him back?
Yeah, I referenced this in the story today, and again, I'm like, I might be too impressionable because you have conversations in Indianapolis, and you ask people what they think they're going to do, and you just say, oh, they're not going to let so-and-so out of the building. They're not going to let CJ out of the building. They're not going to let Javon out of the building. But then the flip side is you hear the Eagles saying, we're going to lose guys. We're expecting comp picks, right? So you can't keep everyone. But I think they're going to try to keep CJ. I don't know how that's going to happen, but I think they're going to try to keep CJ. Ultimately, I think they might be priced out, but I don't know for that to be the case. And I'm kind of hedging here. And as we'll see by the end of this exercise, and this is going to be a long show, and I'm fully on board with that it's not like slam dunks. In the past, you've had guys you're like, I know this guy's back, right? Like this guy shouldn't even be on the list. They're bringing him back. That's not the type of list this is this year. So I have CJ Gardner-Johnson at 5, but I don't know. I think they want him. I just don't know.
So first of all, he's number 17 on the top 150.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that they want him back.
Okay.
I know we hear a lot about there's reporting that they want to make him a priority. They view him as somebody they really want back. I think maybe that's drumming up his market to some degree for the comp pick value.
Maybe.
Here's the thing. I think there is real benefit to like his on-field personality. People have written about he's an agitator in practice just as much as he is in a game. I think Nick Sirianni probably likes that dynamic. A guy who is like super competitive himself. Sirianni, remember, has said like he was asked which player he was most like personality wise, and he said probably CJ. I think they view that as probably a net positive, but he's 25 years old, right? The contractor now, so he's entering his prime, and that's the kind of player the Eagles would commit to. But like the tempestuousness, like we saw him tweeting at Jonathan Gannon, and then deleting the other day in the locker room, to commit long term to something that is going to be such a headache day in and day out. And this is the guy who's going to be the highest paid player on the defense and like the leader of the defense. You look at like the ages of everybody else. I think that's a really, really, really risky bet to take. I think as I've said before, I think he's the perfect player to have on a 1-year deal. I think a long-term commitment here for what it's going to take for real significant money when you care so much about like the balance of the personalities in the locker room. I don't know. I wouldn't do it. And I don't know. We'll see.
It's an interesting discussion. I've heard this before. This is football and in life, I imagine, is that money doesn't change people. It just makes you more of what you are. Right. And so if you're worried about CJ, then you'd be worried even more when the contract comes in and he's emboldened. But if you think that like, all right, let's not conflate a big personality in practice with a negative presence. Right. I don't think stuff like tweeting about Jonathan Gannon is a big deal. I wouldn't worry about that, right? If he's value added in the locker room, and he's certainly value added on the football field, if you think that there's been growth and maturity there, then I wouldn't be concerned with that. But I'm sorry, go on, and then I want to compliment you for a second.
Go ahead.
Well, I do want to give you a lot of credit here, and it's something that I can learn from. I respect how like you really think independently about these things here, and certainly I don't want to come off like a stenographer, and like but I can be impressionable in that you hear things and you're like, well, they probably know more than me. But I think you do a really good job of saying, well, there's probably motive for whenever someone says something. If there's this school of thought that they really want him back, perhaps it's to raise the price or create leverage in a different situation. Who knows? I think you do a real good job with that. And I think that's especially applicable for this game here.
Well, I'm not sure I needed gassing up for that, but thank you for saying so. You think independently too. You don't have to. It's not my own corner.
There's people.
I'm really interested to see what happens here. I really am. I think if the Eagles didn't have Dom DeSandro, they wouldn't even consider bringing him back. But I don't know. The kind of deal it's going to take versus the headache. I'm skeptical. I've been skeptical all along. I could absolutely be wrong about this. He's a good player. Is he a great player? I don't know.
Well, so that's a debate that I was going to get to, because you're very focused on the Chip Kelly aspect of this here, which is like, what's he like in the locker room? What's he like in the organization?
No. I don't want to.
Wait here. Please let me finish.
Like Mr. Locker Room guy.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Because I'm just saying, at the end of the day, you need blue chip players to win, right? I feel very strongly about that. You need guys who are at the top of the league at their position. And this is the conversation we had going back to midseason when we talked about Gardner-Johnson or reps. Gardner-Johnson has a better chance of being a top of the league player at his position. And if you're going to pay someone, 8 digits, you want him to be top of the league at his position. And so that's why I think this is a possibility.
I mean, I am not Mr. Chip Kelly, locker room guy. I would just say I wouldn't be saying these things if like, I hadn't seen and heard things that give me pause.
Yeah. But
right.
It's not
like it's things that I think would be real headaches down the road. It's
the line in Bull Durham. You win 20 in the show, they'll call the shower shoes. They'll call the fungus in your shower shoes colorful. Right? If that's the line from Bull Durham. I see Marissa laughing. That was before your time.
I'm just wondering how you just whipped that one out.
I've used it a lot when it's when the conversation comes up about a player's kind of personality, or ultimately, and Steve Keim once said this, that if Hannibal Lecter ran a 4.4, they'd call him what? I need to finish the line here. I brought this up. It was a great line. If Hannibal Lecter ran a 4, here I see in Google here. Yeah. If Hannibal Lecter ran a 4.3, we'd probably diagnose it as an eating disorder. And the point being that there's exceptions made for talented players. And I think you'll see this in the draft next month, that there's going to be exceptions made for really talented players.
And I don't know that he is that good. I don't know that he is a blue chip player.
Well, then you don't bring him back then, because I'm not paying a safety. I'm not paying a safety that money unless you think he's a blue chip player. We've seen them get by at that position in the 5 to 7 to 9 range, right? Not the 14 million range.
Now listen, are you going to feel good if you strut out in week 1 and your safeties are Marcus Epps and Reed Blankenship? Probably not. You're not going to feel great. But I think it's also part of the larger conversation about how much defense matters, what positions matter. If you're going to be spending, would Howie Roseman, if he can spend for one big guy, would he rather spend on Javon Hargrave or CJ Gardner-Johnson? One guy's 25, one guy's 30. Yeah. But we know the positions that he cares about more.
Yeah. Now, Shield does a really good job in his, he did this when he was at the Athletic too, in projecting the market. And I was surprised in his CJ Gardner-Johnson write-up, where he did say the safety market's tricky to project, but he thought the comp was the Justin Reed deal, which was 3 years, $31.5 million. I was very surprised to see that. I thought the comp was more in line with the Marcus Williams deal, which is like $14 million a season. I think if you're talking about $10.5 million per year, that might be closer to an acceptable range. I think when you start to get to 14, 15 million a year, you're saying that's too much. I was surprised to see the Justin Reed comp. I thought it was going to be the Marcus Williams one.
All right, let's take a break. We're through 6 of the 20 players. We'll be back on the other side with more Flu World Order.
You can tell when you're using a cheap razor based on the nicks and the cuts and the irritation. And then there's the annoyance of subscription razors when you're waiting for the cartridges to arrive, or you can't believe how much you just spent on them. That's why you must meet Henson Shaving. Henson Shaving is a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer that has made parts for the International Space Station and Mars rover, and now they are bringing precision engineering to your shaving experience. Razor blades are like diving boards. The longer the board, the more wobble. The more wobble, the more nicks, cuts, and scrapes. A bad shave isn't a blade problem, it's an extension problem. By using aerospace-grade CNC machines, Henson makes metal razors that extend just 0.0013 inches. That's less than the thickness of a human hair. That means a secure and stable blade with a vibration-free shave. And it gets better. The razor has built-in channels to evacuate hair and cream, which makes clogging virtually impossible. Seriously, Henson Shaving wants the best razor, not the best razor business. That means no plastic, no subscriptions, no proprietary blades. The Henson razor works with standard dual-edge blades to give you that old-school shave with the benefits of new-school tech. Once you own a Henson razor, it's only $3 to $5 per year to replace the blades. I'll admit that affordability is attractive to me. Only $5 a year in blades, that's a good sale right there. It's time to say no to subscriptions and yes to a razor that'll last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/birds to pick the razor for you and use code BIRDS and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just make sure to add them to your cart. That's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com/birds and use code BIRDS.
All right, back on Birds with Friends. Oh, Zach. Uh-oh.
Zach,
Zach
2
eating
times in a
something.
row.
Yeah. I mean, I went to pee too. I got back. What are you munching on over there?
Sushi.
Wow.
Wow.
He's not munching. He's like full bite over there.
Yeah. Is this leftover sushi?
No, I
I hope not.
no, Emily picked it up on the way home. Like
Wow.
lunch, like a lunch special sushi. And I thought excuse me, that Henson Shave ad was going to be a little longer. So
Second time getting burned by that this week.
no, I was back though. I made sure I was back in my seat. But
Do you want to take a few more bites and Marissa and I will talk?
Yeah, I'm a little jealous you're eating sushi, Zach. You know.
no, that's okay. That's okay. I also got the edamame here too as well.
Oh.
So
I think per pick you should have a piece.
that's yeah.
You know what it's called when you eat it?
Edamame. Oh, no, what's the joke?
At a daddy.
Gotcha. Okay.
I've never heard that one.
I'll
Well,
sell
usually
that.
it's not pronounced quite like mommy. So
The chat would like to know what kind of sushi, Zach.
It's like a cucumber roll. No, like I actually
straight
don't know.
veggie or
No, it's
I like a veggie
it's-
roll.
It's tuna, but I don't think it's rice. The roll. I think the roll's like a cucumber.
Oh, very healthy.
Right. Yeah. So
interesting.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you,
and
Emily.
then-
Yeah.
yes, I could take a hint after a week in Indianapolis, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we have number 53 on the Athletics Top 150, Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham, who will be 35 in week 1 next year. Zach, where do you have Brandon Graham?
Where do I have Brandon Graham? That's a great question, and I need to pull my list up here. Sorry. I have Brandon Graham at number 3 on this list.
I've got him at number 2.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, good. Again, thinking alike here. I think Brandon Graham is the type of veteran that if you bring him back, it's not sentimentality. We've seen him in that backup role. That's a really important role for the Eagles. I think an under the radar question here, by the way, and this is related to Brandon Graham is what do you make of Derek Barnett? Right? If Derek Barnett is not in the plans at all, then you really need 4 guys there. And I imagine one of them is going to be a draft pick. But if one of them is Brandon Graham, that's a good outcome. If you think Derek Barnett, who's already under contract, can come back from his ACL and play in that Brandon Graham role from last year, then that certainly affects it. But not saying Brandon Graham is going to take less to stay here, but I think that what his market would be probably fits in with where the Eagles are. And that's someone who Bo did a great job outlining in his piece when he was with Brandon's wife, that Brandon has roots in this area. This is not someone who just lives here during the season. He's raising his kids here. So I'm going Brandon Graham.
Yeah, Derek Barnett's contract is structured such that he's probably going to be on the team next year. It would cost the Eagles money to cut him. So it's a good point by you. That's a real factor here. I find it hard to believe, maybe him more than anyone else this side of Kelsey, that he's going to play somewhere else. Now, as his wife Carlene said, like they sort of expected that they were going to leave Philadelphia every time he's been a free agent before. And that has not happened. So who knows? He's on the record as saying he wants to play 2 more years. If he comes back to the Eagles, he will tie Chuck Bednarik for the longest tenure with the franchise in the history of the team. I don't know. Like it's possible that he played too well this year, that there might be offers out there that the Eagles really can't afford to match. But I sort of think that if he wants to be back, he'll be back.
And that's a position that ages well, right? There are edge rushers in their mid-30s who remain productive. So it's not like wide receiver or a corner, right? Where you kind of fall off a cliff. Robert Quinn aside this year.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't want to be paying on, like, he tore his Achilles 2 years ago.
Yeah,
he had a great season this year, but it was probably an outlier of a season that was benefited by how strong the overall pass rush was, right? He's in terms of like practice value, like he's a day-to-day energy guy. Sirianni has talked about that, but I don't know. I guess I wouldn't be. I mean, I have him at number 2, but I guess I wouldn't be completely shocked if he signed elsewhere.
Yeah. And now this isn't a backhanded compliment, although it might come off like it to him. He's not someone who thrives based on his physique and athleticism either, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's some guys who once that speed's not there, they're done, or
right.
Once their body starts to get a little older. I mean, that's not Brandon's game, where he needs to be in like optimum shape and optimum speed to be an effective pass rusher.
Mm. All right, next up we have ya boy Javon Hargrave. For the reasons we talked about, I have him at number 4.
I have Javon at number 4 as well.
All right. No blood there.
Yeah. Look, Javon is going to have a lot of Bojangles with this contract. Have
you ever had Bojangles, Zach?
Of course. I covered the ACC. There were a lot of late night. Sure. There are a lot of late night Bojangles. I mean, matter of fact,
Cookout.
I've had it.
How would you Peckness migrate Bojangles, Cookout, and Chick-fil-A? Your favorite?
I mean,
Southern staples.
Yeah, I would probably nest Chick-fil-A, although I wish it was open on Sundays, right? I would peck Bojangles and I would migrate Cookout. What about you?
I would migrate Chick-fil-A. I would nest Bojangles and peck Cookout.
Now this isn't ignorance, but I suppose there was a healthy dose of ignorance. To be literal, there's an unhealthy dose of ignorance here. I did not realize how unhealthy sweet tea was for you when I first moved down to ACC territory, and everything down there is sweet tea. And up here, where I'm from, iced tea is something people drink, but it's not considered like an unhealthy beverage. You can sweeten it.
A little green tea, pomegranate blueberry from Trader Joe's here.
There you go.
Like tea, but yeah.
Yeah. So I got to tell you, I never had sweet tea until I was down. I was living in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I was in North Carolina basically every other weekend. And everywhere you go has sweet tea, and sweet tea is really good. But then you realize 2 years later, it is not good for you. So, I realized that. But
Popeye's fries, some of my favorite fries in the game. Yeah. Maybe, they'd be in my Mount Frymore.
Yeah, but Bojangles. Yeah, I used to have the sweet tea at Bojangles, and that was not a smart idea. But I brought up the Bojangles there because right by Javon Hargrave's house where he grew up, and on his way home from school, there was a Bojangles, and he used to, after he lost games, he said he could not eat Bojangles, and his high school team went winless, and he missed a lot of Bojangles, and he likes to eat. And so this next contract, he was on a 3-year, $39 million contract when the Eagles signed him last time. Really one of the best free agent signings the Eagles have had in a long time. I mean, for what, they identified the player really well. He outperformed that contract. And if he got 3 years, 39, with the, I know it's a different age demographic, but with the production he was coming off of in Pittsburgh, man, with the way he's rushed the quarterback since then, this is going to be a huge deal. But I think it's a premium position for the Eagles, and it's still a player who's productive. I think they're going to try to make it work, but again, this might be one where they're priced out.
And I the age is a real factor here, right? Like he's a very good player, but are you going to make your one big investment of the offseason a player at that age? I mean, now obviously I'm not counting the Jalen Hurts extension. I'm talking about money that's going to matter in the short term. Like if you can afford to re-sign Javon Hargrave, you can probably afford to sign Draymond Jones instead, right? And push the money forward and sign a longer term deal, and you get a guy who's in the prime of his career. That's like where the sentimentality thing matters, right? I think, I mean, I have him at 4 because I think the Eagles would like to have him back. But I think everybody here even after everybody here, actually, there are no guarantees on this. As you said earlier, like in the past, there have been guys we know are coming back. I don't think there is anybody who we know is definitely coming back. I just think I have him this highly because the Eagles would like to have him back if the price is right. But if you're going to sign one big money deal, I don't know that it should be Javon Hargrave.
Yeah, I hear you. When you talk about some of those younger D tackles, the thing is there's a little more projection there, right? And with Javon, you've seen the pass rush production, right?
Sure.
I know he's old, but I mean, let's say you can sign him to 3 years at 17 a year. Okay. Would you do that?
Guaranteed 17 for 3 years.
I mean, let's say the first 2 years are guaranteed. So 34 guaranteed.
I don't know, man. That sounds like a lot. I mean, the price is what it is, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know that I would do that.
Now, okay. Now, I guess, would you give that same contract? I mean, you mentioned Draymond Jones. Would you give that same deal to Draymond Jones?
Well, you would hope that you would expect it to be like a 4-year deal, right? And like a 4-year deal for, let's call it 460.
Or like a Zach Allen type,
Yeah, I mean, there's more projection, obviously.
Yeah.
There are many more unknowns, but I don't know. I think I probably would. I don't know.
I mean, look, if you're reading between the lines here, one thing Howie Roseman said was that they're going to make sure, their priorities are going to be important to them. They're going to make sure that that they hit their priorities, and that's the offensive and defensive line. Yeah. They're not going to go into this season. I'll say this with confidence: they're not going to go into the season without a pass rushing presence on the interior of their defensive line. And it's not going to be Jordan Davis.
That's just not Milton Williams.
Milton Williams. Yeah, exactly.
The projected starting defensive line is not going to be Reddick, Sweat, Davis, and Milton Williams.
Yeah, that there's going to be someone there who they know can get to the quarterback on a consistent basis. So
okay. All right. Speaking of defensive line, we move now to Linval Joseph, number 142 on the Athletics top 150. We still have yet to have someone who's not ranked in the top 150. Where do you have Linval?
I have Linval 15. Played well for them, but that's Jordan Davis's role in this defense next year.
I have him at 16. I don't think he's coming back, but if Jordan Davis tore his ACL next week and the Eagles needed somebody to fill the hole for a year, Linval Joseph would be the guy they call. Same thing if we're talking, because now these guys count at any point in the 2023 season. So if that were to happen in week 4 and they called Linval off the street, that counts. So I don't know. You might get a point there, Zach. It's not impossible.
What did he have him at? 14?
He had him at 15. I had him at 16.
15. Okay.
Yes. All right. Big one here, Zach. Jason Kelsey, who has had he was not in the top 150 because he didn't technically qualify. He's got that Boyd year thing going on. But where do you have the guy with the only very slightly more popular podcast than ours?
Only slightly. He has better guests than, well, I shouldn't say better guests. He gets big name guests. He had Howie and Nick.
That's a shot at all our guests.
No, sorry, yeah, that's why I took that back. That's why I took that.
I'm just kidding.
He had Howie and Nick.
You think Coach Flynn and you had beef before?
Huge Coach Flynn
till
fan.
this.
And by the way, when you look at the wide receivers in this
What's
draft,
Tim Kawakami thinking?
when you look at the wide receivers in this draft, Coach Flynn deserves a raise. Man, I mean, you talk about developing wide receivers. Credit to Coach Flynn. Here we go. Jason Kelce, I have as the number 1 player
Wow.
for the Eagles in Flu World Order. I think if Jason Kelce wants to return, he's returning. And I don't think Jason Kelce's operating like a guy who just wants to sit at home with his legs up. He's certainly preparing for life after football, but I think what he's doing, he can do it. Look, I don't know. I did see Jason over the weekend. Over the week.
You saw him? I didn't see him.
Yeah, I saw him. He asked him how his wife's feeling. Didn't ask him about foot. I didn't think. I didn't ask him if he's coming back or
tough
not.
scene. Baby was born like a week ago.
I was thinking that.
Indianapolis. Yeah.
But I guess it's her third. She's a pro. But
I think Jason. Look, if he wants to come back, he has a spot on the team. That's what Howie Roseman made it sound like, and I think it's going to be up to him. And I think elsewhere, there's more questions like, is this guy going to be like, can they fit him in? Do they want him back? That kind of thing. Jason Kelce, I think the only question is he retiring or is he playing?
Yeah, and I don't think it's a given that he wants to play again. I think
it's not a given.
Retirement is absolutely on the table. He talked in the Super Bowl locker room that he's not the same player he once was. Jalen makes him look a lot better than he is. He's going to take his time. He's got, as you said, he's got the third baby. I'm not 100%. I mean, I'm not anywhere near 100% sure. I'm not.
So where's he on yours?
60% sure that he's coming back. But because I agree that if he wants to come back, he will be back. I also have him at number 1.
So that was playing both sides of it.
Wow.
Right there.
No, because everybody here the entire list, there are no guarantees, and so he's the one guy who is in control of whether he wants to be back or not, right?
Yes.
Yes. I don't know. Do you think the Eagles? Here's a question for you. Do you think the Eagles like the podcast? Do you think they're happy that he does the podcast?
I mean, I think the Eagles would much prefer any content comes from them.
Right.
I mean, I think they would. No, look, most organizations want to keep things in house, I guess, but I mean, I think so. What Jason Kelce's done more for you than than you've done for him. In my opinion,
they probably don't love it.
So, yeah, deal with it. I'll say this: let your biggest concern be a guy has his own podcast. There's a lot of crap that goes on behind the scenes, some stuff we know about, a lot of stuff we don't know about. Let the distraction be a guy has his podcast. You can live with that.
Mm-hmm. All right, Zach, where do you have Brett Kern, the first player on this list who is not in the Eagles top 150?
Yeah, I have Brett Kern 19.
I have Brett Kern 17.
Okay.
I originally had him 20, and then the possibility of another mid-season signing next year crossed my mind, and so I have him at 17.
Yeah. I don't have much analysis here.
I don't think we need to spend too much time on Brett Kern, given that we are in the
They didn't have a punt in the Super Bowl, so.
Yeah. All right, Zach, this is a really interesting one to me. And I think it's one of the, under the radar, really interesting things of the offseason is what do the Eagles do at backup quarterback? We know they value it organizationally. They don't have a lot of money to spend. They don't have a lot of mid-round draft picks. So it's going to be really interesting to see. But Gardner Minshew, where do you have him?
I've Gardner Minshew at 17.
I have him at 14.
Okay. I think that the Eagles do value backup quarterback, and I think they're gonna look there. And I don't think they'd mind spending. I think Gardner Minshew will go to a spot where he has a better opportunity at playing time. And I think the Eagles can look elsewhere for their backup quarterback. That's not a knock on Minshew. I just don't think the opportunity's there for Minshew for his second contract.
I think this is similar to the arc of the Fletcher Cox thing to me. Mm-hmm. Mid-season, I would have said there's no chance Gardner Minshew's coming back as Zach pops one in.
Took some ginger. I couldn't eat the full roll.
All you did
But-
was throw in a ginger?
Yeah.
You thought that was worth it? If you're gonna throw something in,
Can I
make
eat
it
the roll?
actual sustenance. Get an
Eat the
actual
roll.
piece in there.
I'm all for like starting eating on the pods.
This is a long pod. This is a long pod
Yeah.
to start at. Yeah.
Break the seal from Marissa that eating
Yeah.
on the pod is acceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I get yelled at all the time because apparently I chew with my mouth open, and I talk with food in my mouth. That's one of Michael's biggest.
Who yells at you, Michael? Oh,
Michael. Yeah, you would think like that would not bother him. He's used to like in
like
a
the
locker
offensive
room
line
and-
ogre.
Offensive lineman
He's
are-
calling you out on that.
Exactly. Yes, like almost every meal. I've gotten a lot better with it apparently, but yeah, I get yelled at all the time for talking with food in my mouth.
Zach, if you want to eat, I will make this promise to you. For the audio listeners, I will no longer mention it if you
That's
eating.
okay.
Okay, so I won't call it out. The viewers will get to notice, but I won't
That's
call you
okay.
out on it. Eat away.
I had 2 pieces of the roll, so I feel like I'm satiated until the end of the pod. I'm good.
Okay.
It just looks it looks appetizing. So
My thing with Minshew is, of course, he would like to go somewhere where he has a better chance to start, but there are so many middling quarterbacks on the market this year that I don't know that he's going to find somewhere that's going to be willing to give him a shot, even if it's like a Cardinals or Texans, where it's like you get to be the placeholder for 2 weeks until Bryce Young or whoever takes over. I mean, there's guys like Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, and to say nothing of the guys like Jacoby Brissett and Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, there are so many quarterbacks that there's no guarantee that there's anyone who's going to look at Gardner Minshew and think I'd rather have him than even Mike White, right? And so we know the Eagles coaching staff likes Gardner Minshew. Sirianni has talked about that. So if he surveys the market and there's nowhere that's willing to give him that spot, you could do worse than coming back to a place where you're in a position to succeed when you do have to play.
Here's where I'll push back, is that there are going to be a number of teams this year. Well, let's say 3 teams this year that are going to have potential rookie starting quarterbacks, maybe 4. But I think, depending on how you project a guy as more of a project or a day one starter, I think Gardner Minshew is a really good quarterback to pair up with your rookie quarterback, because maybe if the quarterback's not ready day one, but is ready more midseason, Gardner can start for you, get by for you. I think that would be a more appealing opportunity than an opportunity like Philly, where you're behind an entrenched franchise quarterback. Let's say Carolina, for instance. Okay, Carolina drafts a quarterback in the top 10. Let's say they don't get Derek Carr, but they're drafting a quarterback in the top 10. Pairing Minshew with him, that could be a good outcome for Minshew relative to, being in Philly. So I think Minshew will find an opportunity that's more appealing.
Well, yeah, it's a good opportunity for Minshew, but there's no guarantee. I mean, look at all the quarterbacks who are on the market. So Geno Smith is going to get re-signed. Daniel Jones doesn't count. We don't even count Derek Carr, but those are guys who are filling spots for those positions. Marcus Mariota, Andy Dalton, Jacoby Brissett, Baker Mayfield, Jimmy G to a lesser extent, Taylor Heineke, Carson Wentz, Sam Darnold, Mike White, Teddy Bridgewater. Like, that's a lot of guys who are that same level or better. And so it's not up to Gardner Minshew. Like,
no, but it is up to Gardner.
Those teams could like Taylor Heineke more.
But if you're rating,
the league spoke, and he was only worth a 5th round pick 2 years ago.
I actually don't know if the league spoke to that. I think.
You think the Jags just didn't call around?
Yeah, exactly. I think the Urban year was a good year to fleece the Jags.
That's fair.
But no, I hear what you're saying. I just think if you did a chart for like quarterbacks who are entrenched in their jobs, Jalen Hurts is fairly high up there, and I think Gardner would look for someone who maybe is like 75% or 40. I'm not saying a guy has to be 40%, but there are enough guys who are in like that 70 to 80, that 70 to 90 range than Jalen, who is like 100.
Well, yeah, but I think the right business decision, if you can't find a place to actually compete, is to sign a 1-year deal to put yourself in position to re-enter the market having had success. And where is he going to have more success than a place where he knows the scheme and is put in and is surrounded by good talent than versus going to somebody like, who's a slightly lesser quarterback in terms of safety, like Matthew Stafford. Let's say he goes to the Rams to back up Matthew Stafford. Maybe Stafford has a slightly higher injury risk, but I don't know. I think if he's looking to rebuild his value and to enter the market next year when there are maybe fewer quarterbacks on the market, I think the Eagles would make sense.
Okay, I hear you.
That's all. I mean, I have him at 14, so it's not like I think he's definitely coming back, but that's my reasoning. All right, next up, Zach Pascal the Rascal, the man who had a not great Super Bowl, but is a Sirianni favorite. He is also not in the top 150 here. Zach, where do you have Zach Pascal?
I have Zach Pascal at number 6 on my list.
Number 6? Ooh, this is our biggest difference so far. I have him at 12.
Okay. I'll explain my number 6. I think the market spoke last year. Zach Pascal doesn't cost you too much. I don't think he did much to really boost that number this season. I think that he's someone who probably has more value in Philly than elsewhere. Nick Sirianni loves him. He's a dirty work player, as Nick said on the podium the other day. He can contribute in multiple areas for you. He can be your 4th receiver if you need him to be your 4th receiver. Nick Sirianni discussed him in that number 3 receiver. Him and Quez kind of together in the number 3. But again, I think for like a veteran depth guy who can help you on special teams, who can play different spots in an offense, who knows your offense, and who I don't think is going to cost too much, I think the market's spoken on Zach Pascal, and I think he's got more value to Philly than elsewhere.
I think you made a good point. You've outlined it well. I think you might. This could be what decides Flu World Order. You might win here on Zach Pascal. I could certainly see him coming back. He talked in the postgame locker room about how much he loved being a part of this team. I think he was probably a little bit frustrated that he didn't play more on offense. Sure. That he didn't get more targets than he did. I don't know necessarily where he's going to get those targets, but he also had like a pretty big special teams gaffe in the Super Bowl, to say nothing for the offensive pass interference penalty that he had. I think if the Eagles are going to look to actually upgrade that spot, it's gonna come at the expense of Pascal. Now we'll get to Quez Watkins. If they trade Quez Watkins, maybe you bring back Pascal for a cheap number. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I've misranked him. You're making me regret having him at 12. I wish I had him at like 8, but that's okay.
Let that be your biggest regret today.
That's fair. Zach, where do you have Robert Bo Quinn?
As I eat ginger. Robert Quinn at 18 here.
I have him at 20.
Sorry, was the chewing on the mic?
No.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, I have Robert Quinn at 18. I don't think Robert Quinn's coming back after the season that he had here. The Eagles traded a 4th-round pick for him. That's not a decision that I think will be high up on the best decisions Howie Roseman's ever made. Maybe there was more injury-wise than we realized, and that they think, all right, he can be a good situational pass rusher here. Does he have Sean Desai? He has a background with Sean Desai. He was really productive. He was really productive in Chicago when Sean Desai was there.
Good point.
So maybe Sean's like, all right, I know how to get the most of this guy here. I just think that he could be if there's no market elsewhere and the Eagles are looking for situational pass rushers, there can be worse people to sign.
Yeah. I don't think Howie likes keeping reminders of his bad moves around necessarily, but I guess crazier things have happened. All right,
things have definitely happened. The Robert Quinn returning. I can promise you that. Yes.
All right. A very interesting one next. Miles Sanders. Number 49 on the Eagles list, or on the Athletics list of the top 150 free agents. 26 years old, coming off the best, most productive year of his career. He has said publicly on the record that he wants to be back in Philadelphia. He said it time and time again. Where do you have Miles Sanders?
I have Miles Sanders at number 9 here. You?
I have him at 13, and I almost had him lower. I think that Miles Sanders is the perfect test of Howie Roseman's sentimentality thing.
Okay. I disagree, but keep going here. Okay.
I think there is, unless he is willing to come back, unless the market bottoms out on him and he wants to come back for $3 million, I think spending any money, significant money on bringing Miles Sanders back would be a huge miscalculation. I think we know that the Eagles have the most running back friendly offense in the league. There are a ton of just fine veteran running backs on the market. Guys like Damian Harris or, even Deontay Foreman or whatever. I think Miles Sanders, who offers nothing in the passing game, is not a good receiver, nor a productive receiver, and not a very good pass protector. I think bringing him back, spending money on him would be wild. And I think the only case to do it would be like the sentimentality. This is one where I would be really, really surprised if he comes back. I know he wants to be back. Maybe that's the reason why, but he's not going to turn down more money elsewhere to come back to Philadelphia. And I don't think the Eagles are in a position to spend money on him.
Yeah. I don't think this is about sentimentality. I think this is about supply and demand. Okay. I think that there's an awful lot of, the supply at running back this year is exceedingly high between the free agents available and the draft options. Okay. The way you're describing the Eagles situation is probably a way that you can describe other team situations as well. Right. That I think that there's a chance that the market isn't what Miles Sanders wants out there. And if that's the case, then Miles Sanders can go where he wants to go. And maybe the best situation is here. So that's my point. I don't think the Eagles keep him out of sentimentality. I think the Eagles might have a number where they say, like, look, I don't want to insult you. This is what we're willing to allocate to the position. If you can't find what you want elsewhere, this is what we're willing to allocate it. I don't think they brought back Derek Barnett last year out of sentimentality. I think they brought back Derek Barnett because that's what they were going to pay for that spot in the defensive end rotation. And Derek Barnett thought he was going to get paid more. And they were like, this is the offer if you want to come back here. And I think that, I mean, not obviously the same numbers, but I think that could be what happens here. That said, I have started doing some work on the running backs in this draft class. And man, there are guys who you're like, get this guy, you're paying him less than $1 million a year. Okay. And he might be better in this offense, right? Now, there's always the resource question. If you're spending a second round pick on a running back, you're not spending a second round pick on a different position, right? And you don't want you want to be able to draft based on just the best prospect for you, and not because you need a running back. But the Eagles in 2017, for instance, the Eagles needed a running back going into the draft. Board did not fall the way they wanted. Took Pumphrey in the 4th round. Then they signed LeGarrette Blount afterwards. There's always going to be running backs to sign. Now, the running back might not be as good as Miles Sanders, but there's always going to be running backs to sign. Point being, I think if he comes back, it's at their number, not his number.
I think he is I think he's a little bit too good to be hanging around 3 weeks in free agency. And I don't think the Eagles are going to sign a running back until April or something like that. I don't think they're signing from, but I mean, here's the deal. Okay. You got Josh Jacobs. List. You got Tony Pollard.
Yeah. Saquon Barkley.
Right.
Okay.
He's the next guy, right?
Probably so. Then there's Foreman, Singletary. But yeah, he's probably next guy there. Yeah. How many running backs get paid in an offseason?
I mean, I think some running backs make
Leonard Fournette's Leonard Fournette's on the market now.
Yeah, he's better than those guys.
Yeah.
He's still youngish. and he has speed. I think he's very firmly the number 4 running. But now, he doesn't offer any value in the passing game, and that's why I don't think you spend any money to bring him back. Okay. Speaking of running backs, next up, Boston Scott. Where do you have Boston Scott, Zach? I have him at number 5.
I'm just looking here. It was a different running back draft class last year. I'm sorry, free agency class last year, but like 4 running backs didn't get paid last year. So that's just one thing I would point out. No, like didn't get paid starter money last year in free agency. So I know it was.
Maybe
class.
2 of those guys get franchise tagged, and so there's still only a few teams.
Yeah, last year Leonard Fournette got 3 years, 21. Chase Edmonds got 2 years, 12. Cordero Patterson got 2 years, 10.5. J.D. McKissick got 2 years, 7. Rashad Penny got 1 year, 5.75. Where's James Conner on this list? I don't see Conner. Conner got it better, but they didn't get paid that much.
Jamal Williams too, but
yeah. All right, sorry about that. Who did you ask about?
Boston Scott.
Where did my list go? I feel like Bo. I have so many tabs going here. I'm not used to this. Boston Scott, I have at number 10 on this list.
I have as number 5.
Interesting. You think more of a chance of Boston?
I do. I think
you're all paying your third running back, not your first one.
Well, I'm not paying him. You can't envision the Eagles signing Boston Scott in July to bring him back to camp.
Sure, I can envision it, but I don't think a third running back.
If you don't think people are paying Boston Scott, who do you think are paying Miles Sanders? Who do you think is paying Boston Scott?
Well, that's my point. Is like Boston Scott, I think would
you
probably
bring him
want
back for $1 million and then see if he makes the team.
I think Boston would probably want to go to a better situation.
Yeah, but there aren't all these where are all these magical better situations coming? The Giants might give him $15 million, but
a team that hasn't already valued you as the number 3 running back. Like they've shown you what they've thought of you.
Yeah, and they give him care. I don't know where else he's going to get more work than he gets in Philadelphia. Okay. All right. 4 left, Zach. I'm sorry this episode is going long.
I'm Bo. However long you want it, and however long our audience wants it, is how long I want it. Okay. I think that I feel very strongly that look, the audience speaks. Ultimately, if you have a pizza shop and no one eats the pizza, it's not good pizza. So
maybe it's a marketing problem. Maybe it's a location problem.
Yeah, I think the audience. So I'm listening to the audience here. I'm trying to get better in every way on this. So,
I'd love to go into a whole long back and forth about
what, the pizza?
No, about the length of the episodes and why I was so offended. But we are at 90 minutes and we have 4 more guys to get through. So why don't I say that?
Well, I did think that's what we did for the first 30 minutes of the pod. If I can be frank with you.
No, that was just me being triggered. That wasn't me explaining why. But
okay.
All right. Isaac Seumalo. If we both have Jason Kelce at number 1, that means we probably don't think that Isaac Seumalo was coming back. But if Jason Kelce doesn't come back, all of a sudden the calculation changes. Where do you have Big Ike? I have him at number 11.
I have Isaac at number 11.
Wow.
Yeah, look at that. I think if Jason Kelce retires, then I could see Juergens at center and Seumalo at guard and preserving that.
Seumalo number 27 on the top 150.
Yeah, but I think Seumalo is going to get paid, and that's something that I actually heard a bit in Indianapolis that this is a guy teams like. So,
29 years old. Obviously offers 3-position versatility. A bit of a slightly troubling injury history if I was a team looking to sign him, frankly. But a good player.
Look, now I know tackle and guard's different, but if Halapoulivaati Vaitai got paid what he did, and coming off the role he had with the Eagles, I think Seumalo can get paid this offseason.
I could see him going to Chicago with all that cap space that they've got trying to rebuild that offensive line.
And they need an offensive line. Yeah.
Right, and
you're right.
you can plug him into whatever spot you need.
Yep.
You got Ian Cunningham, who knows him well, the assistant GM.
Mm-hmm.
Just a dot to throw. I've heard also people saying he might want to go back to the West Coast, but who knows?
So what West Coast place would jump out to you there?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it. Maybe the
Rams?
Chargers, maybe the Rams.
They had a lot of O-line issues.
Yeah, they have a lot of money to spend, but
True.
okay. All right. Next up, Zach, the other mercenary defensive tackle, Ndamukong Suh. I have him at 19.
I have Ndamukong at 14.
14.
Yeah, I don't think it's
Wow.
happening. But look, if you lose, if you lose Hargrave and Cox, okay, maybe 1 year deal for a guy who's proven over the course of his career that he can get to the quarterback.
He didn't prove it in Philadelphia.
He was pretty far down the depth chart here, and I actually thought he had some productive snaps in the postseason for them. But I don't think Sue's coming back.
Wow, 14.
This
is the first time where I feel like I have a better ranking than you.
Probably so. I got to admit, I was on 3.5 hours of sleep. I finished that article last night, and then I turned to this. No, I'm saying I did not spend much time like really researching my Ndamukong Suh ranking at 11 o'clock at night last night. So,
What about this morning? We didn't start the show until noon. You were up at 4 probably.
yeah, I was up at 5:40, and
Jeez.
no, I had something at my kid's school this morning. So,
Okay. Yeah, I mean, now listen, there's the this could be a week 15. There's an injury and he's still on the street and he wants to sign up again, but yeah, I don't think things went particularly well for him in Philadelphia production wise. I don't see this one happening.
You had him at 19, Bo?
Yes. All right, 2 left, Zach. We have our only non-free agent now. Quez Watkins, the wide receiver 3, who had the disappointing Super Bowl. The Eagles could save a little bit over $2 million by trading him. This is a different qualification here. This is if he is on the week 1 roster. I have him at number 3 just because of sort of status quo bias.
I have him at number 2 for the reason you said, that he's on the team unless something changes. Everyone else you have to bring back. Quez Watkins is here unless something changes. So
I think I would be surprised if he is the number 3 receiver next year. But as you said, things have to change in order for
I would be surprised if he finishes the season as the number 3 receiver next year. I can see that being a rookie who like maybe isn't ready week 1, but starts to play a more prominent role by week 13.
Okay. All right, Zach. Last player in Flu World Order 2023. Kaiser White, number 118 on the Athletics Top 150, 27 years old. Eagles brought him back in the second wave of free agency, or signed him rather, in the second wave of free agency last year. You must have him. Let me see. What number do you not have?
It's an unlucky number.
Number 69 for Zach. You
That's
have him
an
at 13.
unlucky
I have him at
number.
10.
Yeah. I have him at 13.
I have him at 10.
Sorry, I was thinking of something else.
You're thinking about 69?
No. No, I was
Belichick
not.
and Saban?
No, I was not. Let's go on. Yeah, I have Kaiser White at 13. I think that he's a guy who. So I would have him higher, except I've heard that they like Nakobe Dean in that Kaiser White spot in the defense. Now, the rub there is the can Nakobe Dean play either? Like, can he play the TJ Edwards spot? I can see them bringing one of those linebackers back. Well, I think TJ's gonna get paid elsewhere, so I can see them bringing Kaiser back to pair with Nakobe. But one of those things I kept hearing was that they like him in Nakobe. They like Nakobe in Kaiser's spot, and you are on the smaller side, frankly, if you have Kaiser and Nakobe White as your 2 linebackers.
Different scheme, though, now, slightly. So
True.
Who knows how Sean
No pun
Desai
intended.
will
Yeah,
evaluate that.
Yeah.
What's the pun? Scheme?
slightly.
Oh, just because he's small? Okay. I don't like to think about people by their size, but maybe that's you. Yeah, I think Kaiser White. We both have him one spot behind TJ Edwards, and talking about it, I actually think he's probably more likely to come back than TJ Edwards because I think TJ Edwards is going to get paid, and I think Kaiser White is more likely to be like second or third week of free agency still available, and he comes back for $2 million. He gets to be near Coatesville again. He's talked about enjoying
Coatesville.
I mean, sorry, not Emmaus. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Coatesville. Coatesville's not anywhere near there. Coatesville's south.
Well, I mean, it's still in the Philadelphia region.
I mean, yeah, Kaiser White's more from like the Lehigh Valley area. Yeah. Sorry. I was probably a little too offended by your lack of joke.
I think of all the things for you to be offended by, I think it's reasonable for you. I mean,
that's
for
on
your
brand.
list of priorities. I
That's on brand. Yeah.
Offense. Now I think linebacker is interesting because there are a lot of starting caliber linebackers on the market this year, and so I think the Eagles are going to be fine with. Now we know that they have had trouble in the past.
Exactly. Yeah.
With, playing the waiting game in free agency and signing linebackers, but I think they'll be fine waiting till week 2 or 3 and signing whoever is left for $2.5 million or whatever.
And the other thing I'll say too is that I wrote this morning. I don't want to keep plugging something I wrote, but the Eagles are going to be very cognizant of the comp pick formula this offseason because, as we outlined here, they're going to lose a lot of guys. And in order to maximize that, you don't want to bring guys in. Like, even if they're lower price guys, you don't want anything canceling it out.
Yeah.
So I think if linebacker's a spot where they can sign from the outside, and I think they might like weigh someone who was cut somewhere else than who's like who's an unrestricted free agent.
Right. Or like if all else is equal, you'd rather re-sign Kaiser White than sign whoever else. Now,
exactly.
I mean, you don't want to care too much about the comp pick formula at the risk of making your team worse. But I think that's a fair point. All right. Well, Zach, another rousing year of Flu World Order come to an end. Let me see if I can quickly look at our biggest differences. A spreadsheet
Boston
here.
Scott.
Biggest differences. Dak Pascal, we had a 6-point difference. Boston Scott and Ndamukong Suh, we had a 5-point difference. Miles Sanders, a 4-point difference. Everything else within 3 spots. So, pretty simpatico.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a tight. And remember, you can play along as well on that Google form. The winner will get a signed picture of Michael Dunn.
I think it should be like a thing from each of us.
That's good.
So Zach's t-shirt.
An item to be named.
A signed
Speaking of
picture
which,
Michael.
Marissa, an hour and 40 minutes into the episode, we teased earlier in the week the gifts from Tony Ascenda. You have yours on hand. We all got one of these. It's a shirt that says on the front. We also have the 10th pick, and on the back, a picture of Howie Roseman with his thumb up. How often do you think you're going to wear that shirt, Zach?
I'm not. I really appreciate the thought of the shirt. I mean, for objectivity purposes, I will not wear that shirt. Yeah,
ethics,
I'll go walk around the streets of Indy in this shirt later today.
Yeah, but I'll say to Tony.
Yeah,
I'll say
you.
I really appreciate you listening, and it's awesome. I'm a huge fan of your show. There's a player shirt. You know that if there's merch.
I would love some players.
I would very, very happily wear the merch for that show. Like,
speaking of which, what a performance! You guys been watching Shrinking. Luke Tenney, who plays the brother in Players, starring role on Shrinking. Great talent identification by the Tony Ascenda team.
I haven't watched. I'll have to watch.
Yeah. Have you been watching Your Honor?
No.
Great scene there about an expired driver's license. I'm not going to give anything away, but check that out.
Okay.
You're not a Your Honor fan?
I don't even know what that is.
I mean, Bo, for a connoisseur of art, yeah, Your Honor is a terrific show.
What is it on?
It's on Showtime.
I'm very out of date in my show options.
Oh, it's a Cranston show.
Yeah.
Okay. And Stuhlbarg? Okay, that's pretty high. That's some high level talent.
Yeah, it's in New Orleans.
Do they have good New Orleans accents?
Some do. Yeah, Wendell Pierce is in it.
Wendell, is it like a contractual obligation that every show that takes place in New Orleans has to have Wendell Pierce?
He plays a very important role. It's a really good show. And I disagree with is a Kirmomani in our chat here. I'm enjoying the second season. I was actually skeptical how the second season would go, but I'm enjoying it.
Okay, Marissa, what are you watching?
I have like no new shows. I'm very behind in anything new. So I'm writing down all of these different things you guys are bringing up because my pop culture when it comes to TV shows is very poor. So I could take some advice.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. It's not Wendell Pierce.
Zach is about to get canceled. This is it. This is why he doesn't want to go long because the longer we go in the episode, the more likely he is to get canceled. Here we go.
No, I'm sorry. It's Isaiah Whitlock Jr. Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Clay Davis.
Yeah. I confused my Wire characters. I apologize. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I'm going to try to not get you in trouble for that. All right. Well, what an episode it's been. We got a lot to get to next week. We're going to turn our attention to maybe some players the Eagles could sign from elsewhere. We've got Quackatology. We've got whatever else to get to. Zach, I don't want you to be beating yourself up about this Wendell Pierce thing. This is going to be
Zach just like we had a great episode.
Regret of your day.
An hour.
Listen, he was only 2 pieces of sushi in. He hadn't eaten the whole roll yet. You know, you got to cut the guy a break.
He got like
it was
4 hours of sleep.
I promise you, the confusion was from the Wire. It was not. It was not anything. It was a Wire confusion there. I apologize.
Do you think it was Michael B. Jordan?
Come on, no.
I think it's okay. But it's not for me to decide. All right. Well, what a ride it's been. Going to be very interesting to follow everything that happens over the course of the offseason, mostly because of the flu world order implications. So for Zach and Marissa and Isaiah, we thank you for listening and watching over the course of Combine Week. Fun week it's been. We'll be back next week with a couple episodes, most likely. And for all of us here at Birds with Friends headquarters, we thank you for listening. And as always, we love you.